Yo, where them Catholics at? Man, what's the matter with these bishops?
And welcome back, everybody. It's the Catholic Convert Show. And it's a glorious Monday here in Northwest South Carolina. And Ed is, of course, still suffering through all of that is New Jersey. But he's managed to make it through and be here. And we couldn't be more grateful because the show will not do the same kind of numbers that it does. All three of you would be sorely disappointed without our executive producer and chief key grip.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're underrated. I have
very
to say.
much so. Very much so. It's all the behind the scenes stuff that I do that people just are not aware of.
I know. It's a whole lot of work goes into maintaining a show of this caliber.
Certainly is.
Oh, so it's been a weekend. My wife came down with something this past week. We're pretty sure we got it from someone, or she got it from someone during the Mass of the Holy Day of Obligation for the Mass of the Assumption. And she's just been feeling crappy. She's got the sore throat, all this other. And you know what that means. In a house of my size, we're all going to get it. We've got the kids, me, her, probably the dog. Everyone's going to get it. So very grateful for some close friends of ours that one of them watches this show and both of them are on Twitter as well. So they'll probably know who I'm talking about. Have provided my wife with some homemade elderberry syrup. And I have to say, that stuff is strong because I took some as a preventative measure last night. And hopefully she'll get through it. But for right now and the past couple of days, she's, like I said, felt under the weather, laying out on the couch. I'm keeping her fed and hydrated while getting the teenagers to pick up most of the slack so that she's not having to do much of anything. But I was thinking about what it takes to take care of her, take care of the kids. And I realized something today that I've never in my life lived alone. Obviously I didn't live by myself as a kid. I joined the Army when I was 17. So I went straight from living at home with my family to living in the barracks or having a roommate. And then I met my wife while I was in the Army. We moved in together, had a couple of kids, got married about 13 years later. So, the exact opposite of what I should have done. But I wasn't Catholic then, so I get a pass. And the closest that I've ever come to living alone is when I was traveling on the road for the construction company that I work for as a project superintendent. Was living in and out of motels and hotels for like 3 weeks at a time. But I was really only there long enough to sleep for a couple of hours. And then I would head back to the job. So I don't think I've been alone for more than a couple of days at a time, living wise. And I think it would feel alien to me because I've always had someone else in the house with me. It's my wife and kids or roommates or whatever. And so taking care of her and keeping the kids loaded up with multivitamins and elderberry syrup so they don't get it, and me trying to fight it myself. I think it would feel weird if I didn't have all these people in my house to look after, talk to, spend time with, and take care of. And I can't imagine that I wouldn't just be overly burdened with boredom. Like I would never be here, because if I was here by myself all the time, I would have to go find something to do.
Oh, yeah.
And I have a buddy of mine who is also my RCIA sponsor. And he was my confirmation sponsor. And he lives alone, but I think the way he manages it best is he works a lot because he works for a local newspaper.
Mhm.
And two, he's always doing something for his family. I think he's got like 37 godchildren because he's just like that guy at the church. Everybody's like, hey, you're going to be godfather because he's an awesome dude, right? And he's also doing a lot of stuff at the church all the time. He manages most of their social media because he's a digital content manager for the newspaper. And so I think that's what I would have to do. I would have to, as much as I'm already doing for my parish, I would have to be doing even more and maybe even find like a volunteer slot at the parish, like a full-time thing, just to be occupied and be around other people. And I'm not saying I can't be alone. I go camping by myself because camping with my wife means getting a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And when I don't take the kids, because I didn't take them when they were younger, it's usually just me. And so I would have to fill it with something to be around other people.
Yeah.
Humans are eusocial creatures. We don't do well in isolation. Most people who end up dying early don't have friends. They never get out of the house. They're shut-ins. And it's debilitative to the human body to be alone.
Yeah.
So even though it stresses me out sometimes having so many people to look after or even stop the occasional fist fight between teenage boys, or at least tell them to take it outside so they don't damage the furniture,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would do well. At least I wouldn't be here all the time if I was living alone. But going back to my RCIA sponsor, my buddy John, he's probably the one guy that I can talk to about, and well, you as well, about some of the weirder aspects of Catholicism. Because let's face it, there's a lot in Catholicism that's just weird. But there's a lot in Christianity that's weird as a whole too. Because even though, the aggressive Protestant denominations will rail and beat their chests and self-flagellate themselves into oblivion when you mention the word tradition, they have traditions as well.
Sure they do.
Right. But there's differences because you have big T traditions and you have little t traditions.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, we just had the Feast of the Assumption. That is a big T tradition. Mary was assumed into heaven, body and soul. That's a big T tradition. Now, you were telling me off the air about a little t tradition. There's one of the churches up where you live where on the Feast of the Assumption every year, there's a procession that carries a giant statue of the Virgin Mary out to the edge of the ocean, and they bless the ocean. That is a small t tradition. And I say small t because I'm 4 hours, 3.5 maybe, from the coast. We're not going to process to the ocean.
No.
Right. There are some, I mean, we could, but that's more like a pilgrimage. We could go to a creek or a lake or a pond around here, but we don't do that. And there are some little t traditions where some parishes will process out to the ocean. Obviously, these are parishes in close proximity to the ocean, where they'll walk out and stand in the ocean, right? Just get their feet in the ocean. And it's like a tradition. But if you ask them, why do you go and stand why do you put your feet in the ocean on the Feast of the Assumption? They go, because that's just what we do. Okay, but why? And then they'll try to explain it, and they can't because, again, it's a little t tradition, right? It's like there are some churches in the Bahamas on the baptism of Christ, they'll process out as a parish and they throw a golden cross into the ocean. And then all the kids, some of them will either be wearing, like under 18, when I say kids, will go out, some of them wearing swimsuits, some of them fully clothed in whatever they wore to mass, will jump into the ocean and retrieve that cross. Now, that would only work in the Bahamas, right? Because if they tried to do that in Jersey, they couldn't see the cross once they tossed it into the water.
Wait a minute. Well, no, you know, the Greek Orthodox do that off the coast of Greece as well. They throw the cross.
And I'm referring to a Greek Orthodox church down there.
Oh, okay, yeah. But it this year it would work in Jersey because, you know, the water coloration is not due to pollutants or anything in the water. It's due to the amount of specific minerals that are in the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same thing here in South Carolina.
Exactly.
We get it. It's the sediment that gets kicked up. It's the algae. It's more to do with the chemistry of the water than with pollutants, right? Now, it's not like we're talking about the Hudson, right? Where you don't even have to be Christ to walk across it. You just stand on top of all the pollutants to get from one side to the other. But you could almost drive it, and you could negate the need for the bridge.
Yes. But I see your point.
But you see my point. It only works in specific locations because the clarity of the water. So again, it's a little T tradition.
Yeah.
But that's the cool thing about Christianity is you have regional traditions. You even have some traditions that are just parish-based traditions. Because we have, this year is our 50th anniversary of our parish dedication.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to have this homecoming jubilee kind of thing coming up in September. You know, right after mass, everybody goes out, sweats, dyes, and in their suits, and has a great big old outdoor picnic that's encompassing of all the people from all three masses that we have every Sunday. They're going to do a low mass for the Latin mass that afternoon, so they can get in, get the mass, and get back out, quickly to the parish picnic. But there's a lot more weird things than just walking to the ocean or standing in the ocean or throwing a cross in the ocean about Catholicism. Like, for example, right now, there's a guy driving across the country with St. Jude's arm seat belt in his passenger seat, just driving across the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine
if he gets pulled over?
If he gets pulled over by a guy, by some state trooper or a cop that has no idea the slightest piece of information about Catholicism other than it exists, and he walks up to the window, what's his name? Father Martins, rolls his window down, and the first thing that cop sees is a human arm in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
It's going to be a weird conversation.
Yes, it is.
How do I get out of this one?
Yeah.
It's just me and you. Or what about that other priest who was driving around a year or two ago with the skull of Thomas Aquinas in his front seat?
Yeah.
Very strange. You have to admit, it's weird, because I can talk to my Protestant friends. They're like, "Oh, what is that on the wall?" Like if I invite them to mass and they come to mass, they're like, "Oh, what is that over there on the wall? That little circle thing that's on that red velvet backing." Oh, that's a piece of Jose Maria Escriva's bone. Why? Because that's just what you do. Okay. Yeah. Because otherwise you have to get into these very long, detailed conversations about Okay, saints, relics, the veneration of relics, and how they have biblical precedent, with
Sure.
the bones of
Look 'em back
Elisha.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, so it's weird, especially to outsiders. But there's a lot of things the Protestants do that are weird to outsiders because, again, Christianity as a whole has big T and little t traditions. And I think that's probably the best part about it is that even as a Catholic, I could go and hang out with a Seventh-day Adventist, right? I know like 3 of them. Or I could talk with a Lutheran. Like Seventh-day Adventists, they're not allowed to eat bacon. But I specifically know of one that sneaks and has bacon because he converted for his wife.
Yeah.
Right. But he still has bacon on his burgers, even though she doesn't know about it. And I'm pretty sure they don't watch or listen to this show because
maybe it's turkey bacon. I don't know.
Oh, it's not. I've gone to lunch with the guy.
I'm trying to help the guy out.
No. It's not. And it's like his guilty play. He's like, oh, I've missed this so much as he bites in. But
could not give up bacon.
You've told me stories where, and I've experienced this too. So we go out to lunch with fellow Catholics. The food comes out, and then it's time to say grace. It's probably the only time people will see a group of people saying grace where everybody is saying the exact same prayer. And it makes people stop and turn around. What the hell are these people doing? That's weird. The guy didn't, ramble on for 68 minutes as the food got cold, saying grace. Not that you're specifically required to say a specific prayer to say grace, even in Catholicism.
Yeah.
But in general, there's the one. Right? And everybody knows it. And when it comes to saying grace, we all say it, and then maybe the guy who's leading it at the end will add on a couple of things. Good Saint Joseph, pray for us. Holy Mary, pray for us. Something at the end of it, and then we sit down and eat. And it's happened to you. Everybody's saying grace at the table when you guys go out for your breakfast, and it was like they all just said it in unison. It sounded almost robotic, and so it's weird. But I think the weird stuff about Christianity is awesome. You imagine having to explain, because we've had to, you have to explain to someone, oh no, that's not a cracker. That is the real body and blood of Christ. So you're a cannibal? Technically, yeah. Yeah. But it's funny because if I'm talking with my Protestant friends and what they know of Catholicism is it exists and they're not one. And I'm not talking about the hardcore anti-Catholics. I'm talking about the Protestants that go, well, we're all Christians, so we're all brothers and sisters, and we're all, as long as we're following Christ, we're on the same side, whoever is not against me is for me, kind of thing. And those are the best kinds of Protestants, because you don't get into the arguments or debates or any of the stuff that you see, the toxicity that you see online, people arguing about religion, because it does come down to kind of the same thing as where people are arguing about politics. It's not productive.
Yeah.
Right. But I can be talking to them and I'm like, oh, I showed them the apostolic blessing that I got from Pope Francis. And they're like, so what's that? It's just a piece of paper, bro. That's all. That's the way I just explained it. I'm like, it's just a piece of paper. It's like if your pastor said, I bless your marriage, and then you got a certificate saying that. Okay? Same thing. And they go, okay. And they still don't get it. But they don't have to. It's fine. But what would you say outside of, riding around the country with a skull or an arm or a leg or a vial of blood in your front seat or in your glove box. Sorry, officer, let me move this vial of blood while I get my registration and insurance card for you. What would you say are some of the weirder aspects of Catholicism that we take as, that's just what we do, but to an outsider would be, what the hell is this kind of thing?
Well, I mean, it depends on who you're sharing that information with and what they consider as weird. But while you were talking there, I was thinking about something traditionally wise that my parish of my youth, my St. Mary of the Assumption in Trenton, that something that has gone on for 130 years. And it's something that happens at other Byzantine Catholic churches as well. Back in the day, so the folks who emigrated to U.S. and are members of the church that I go to, or the St. Mary of the Assumption, they're basically Eastern European. Most of them from Slovakia, along the mountains between Slovakia and Poland, so they're all from the same area. And there used to be, quite a long time ago, when they would go on pilgrimages, they would bake these cookies that are called either Medonic or Medoniki, depending on exactly where you're from over there. And it translates roughly to honey cookie, which is interesting because there's not really any honey in them. But anyway, these are cookies
that's another weird thing. Why is it called a honey cookie? I don't know. We just call it that. Is there honey in it? Absolutely not. Okay.
There are some versions of it that do contain some honey, but the way we make them, there's not. But there is molasses in them, if that helps. But anyway, these things,
it's still not honey.
It's still not honey. But these things will last a long, long time. Like one of my sisters makes them for Christmas and Easter, and she'll give me a ton of them, and I will be working on them for months. They're delicious. They're great. Anyway, so when the folks came over here, they didn't, now you had a church that was right down the street. You didn't have to take this long journey to go to church, to receive the sacraments, to go to confession, any of that kind of stuff. But you still want to make those cookies, the Medonic. So on the feast of your church, so in our case, the Saint of the Assumption, the old ladies of the church would bake these cookies, and there's icing on top of them. And what they would do is they would take prayer cards and they would put those on top of the cookie, and they would be held onto the cookie with icing. And then they would be in the back of the church on the Feast of the Assumption, and they would be selling these cookies. And so I used to love the Assumption because as a kid, I couldn't wait till Mass was over so I could run into the back and I could pick out my Medoniki for the ride home. It was great. So that's something that has been going on for 130 plus years in my particular parish. And someone might say, cookies, church, like I don't get what's going on here. But then when you know the backstory, that it references way back when my people, as people like to say, back in the day over in Eastern Europe, when they would have to travel a long ways to go to church and things, they would pack these particular cookies for their journey. So that's a great tradition. But if someone said to you, why are you selling cookies with prayer cards on them once a year at your church, a lot of people would think that was very bizarre, but I'm happy that we still do it. I still look forward to it all these years later. I look forward to it as much as I did when I was 6 or 7 years old. I certainly look forward to the holidays when I know my sister's going to be loading me up with these things. But but that's you're right.
The thing about that's a little T tradition.
It's a little T tradition, yeah.
Before you told me about it, I'd never heard of it.
Yeah,
and ironically, before you told me about it, I didn't really know that. Well, at least before me becoming Catholic, I didn't know that the Roman Catholic Church was simply one rite of the entirety of the Catholic Church. I
Yeah.
didn't realize that the Maronites and the Byzantines and the Syriacs were all, and more. There's like 20 of them, I guess.
24 altogether.
Were 24 altogether. Were all encompassed under the same church, as in communion with Rome. So when I thought about that, I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then, okay, you're a Byzantine Catholic. I don't know what the hell that is. Let me look it up. And this is after you and I had first met each other, which was ironically when I said, yeah, sure, you'll make a great co-host. I'm looking it up, and there's a lot of things that are very similar. Obviously, it's divine liturgy. It's not mass. There's a lot of things that are very similar to what I understand as a young Catholic, not young human, but as a young Catholic. Mm-hmm. Well, I think I'm still young. My gray is mostly stress related, not age related.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, wow, there's so many different things that, because I've only ever attended a Latin Rite Catholic church. I've only ever attended the High Mass outside of the occasional Latin Mass on certain holy days of obligations or feast days. And I find it weird. And I'm sure that if I went to church with Enoch, if he was at a Syriac Rite church, I would find it weird. If I went down the road to St. Rafka's, which is a Maronite church, I'm pretty sure that I would find it weird, and I wouldn't understand some of the things that they were doing.
Sure.
Because you get locked into this very formulaic, which is probably it's a good thing, but it's also something that kind of prevents you from understanding a lot of the other traditions and rites of the different rites of the church.
Yeah.
So if I'm pretty sure I would love attending a Byzantine divine liturgy. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I would love it. The second or third time I went. The first time I went, I would be wildly uncomfortable, not knowing what the hell I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Which is very similar to how I felt about the Latin Mass.
Mm-hmm.
So I still don't know what the hell to do at the Latin Mass because I don't attend it regularly. I attend the High Mass, and I'm probably not going to be able to attend the Latin Mass at least until next summer, because we just began this past Sunday religious education. The catechism classes started back up, and they are from like 8:50 to 9:50, which gives us a 10-minute window to hit the 10 a.m. Mass, and the Latin Mass isn't until 12. I'm not driving there back, taking the kids to RE, and then there back again.
Yeah.
When it's a 40-minute drive each way for me, there'd be no point. So unless there's a day when, there's no class today because whatever, maybe it's because it ties in with the school. So teacher holiday, teacher work day, something, and there's no RE on that Sunday, I might be able to go and attend a Latin Mass. However, this coming Saturday, my parish priest is hosting a class from like 9 to 11 on the Latin Mass. It's for people who either want to start attending the Latin Mass or currently attend the Latin Mass or are just interested in learning about the Latin Mass, because we're not losing the Latin Mass anytime soon. We're the home of the TLM and our deanery. But what it is if you want to know how to participate, how to follow the readings, responses, so forth and so on, in the Latin Mass, then you just show up to this class. And I'm planning on going this Saturday. And so it's going to be an opportunity for me to go in there. And we're even going to have like some practice runs with the priest. He's going to be like, okay, and then we do this, and then we do this. And you guys will say it's right there on the printout that I gave you, for people who don't know. And I think that's awesome. I think that would be something that's very beneficial if a priest were to just do that in a YouTube channel for the High Mass, and do it for the Latin Mass.
Sure.
And it should just be linked, on every parish website.
Yeah.
Because when I first went to Mass, man, it was weird. Not weird in the sense that this is strange, but I got no idea what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
I'm like a half a second to 2 seconds behind everyone else between sitting, standing, and kneeling. You know, they're like, oh, we're standing again. Oh, I gotta sit. Oh, we're sitting again. Nope, we're not sitting. We're kneeling. We went from kneeling to standing and then back to kneeling, and I sat by accident.
Well, see, then you wouldn't be confused at the Byzantine liturgy since we never kneel and we rarely sit.
See?
So there you go. And speaking of that, so I told you about the Madonic. Well, we also have this thing called Midavania, which there's very specific holy days during the year where after Mass you go up and you receive a blessing with the holy oil or the chrism from the priest.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get blessed, the altar servers are there and they're holding these baskets, and they have little small pieces of bread in them. In the Byzantine, right, we have it's actual bread and wine, and they're together that we receive the Eucharist. So the Midavania is they have that same bread, but it's not consecrated. And the reason they would have that after liturgies is, again, because if you were in Slovakia back in the day, you traveled a long way to go to Mass. So this was your sustenance. This holy bread was your sustenance to last you as you traveled back home after Mass. So we still do it. We still have this, what's called Midavania. And it's such a great custom to have that. And and then you would have different, the priest would say different things, and you would have different responses depending on what holy day it was. Or if it's during the course of the year, what you guys would call ordinary time, the priest would say, Christ is among us. And our response would be, he is and always will be. Easter, he says, Christ is risen. And we say, indeed, he is risen. At at Easter and at Christmas, he says, Christ is born. And we say, glorify him. Now, we would normally say these things in Old Slavonic. So, like, for the Christmas greeting, it's Christos Rotstajcha, Slavite Jeho. For Easter, it's Christos Voskres, Voistino Voskres, and so on and so forth. But again, that's one of those cool things. Like if someone comes into my church and there's altar servers holding a basket of little pieces of bread, you would say, well, why is he doing that? And why is everybody taking a little tiny piece of bread and walking and going home with it? But there you go with the traditions. It's such cool stuff. I love it.
I can just imagine. I go in there and I got no idea what's going on. I was like, dude holding up some bread. I'm like, no thanks.
No, I had breakfast. I'm good.
I already ate breakfast.
So they are. I mean, they're blessed. They're just not consecrated. So it's kind of neat. So like sometimes people will ask me, "Hey, I can't make the liturgy. Could you bring me some of the bread home?" So it's kind of a neat thing. And ever since it used to be just a basket of bread there sliced up, but now they put them in individual little cups. They're sealed because of ever since COVID and such. But
right.
But again,
I did notice that's one of the things that changed. From what I understood of the Catholic Church is when you went up to receive communion, you would receive the host and the blood. Boom, sip, make your way back to the pew. And the one Catholic church for that one Mass that I attended when I was in high school with a friend of mine who I've talked about him before on the show. His dad was Catholic. His mom was Baptist. I watched that happen. When I started attending my parish, I saw only, people receiving the host. And I assumed, well, it's probably because of COVID, right? And it was. However, then I saw some people going over there, and instead of receiving the host, they would only receive the wine. Or they would receive by intinction, which is where the host is dipped into the wine and then given to you. And I received my first communion with intinction, which as should be. And I was worried. I was like, well, are we not getting full communion if we're only receiving the host? Of course not, because it is the body and blood of Christ.
Yeah.
And ancient tradition traces all the way back to where you didn't receive wine at all. The wine, as a separate consecrated, or separate but same consecrated gift, was added later. So even traditionally, you're still getting full communion. You're getting the body, blood, soul, divinity of Christ in the host, because it's Christ's flesh. And guess what flesh contains? Blood. So there you go.
Yeah.
But I saw that change, and obviously some parishes around here have brought back the chalice for communion, which is cool. But I have to say, I'm kind of looking forward to that eventually coming back at my parish as well. I don't think there's a reason that it hasn't, other than it just hasn't.
Yeah.
I do remember there was a shortage of wine because there's only like three vineyards that make the wine for communion.
Yeah.
And they had a shortage because they had like a bad year with the grapes or something like that. But again, what you just mentioned. Oh, by the way, here's some bread. No, thanks. It's not even enough for a sandwich. You got no idea what's going on if you've never been to a Byzantine rite, and you would have to go to a Byzantine rite church for an entire year, meaning for every single holy day of obligation and every single day throughout the liturgical calendar, just to be able to say, oh, I've seen this before.
It's pretty complicated. Yeah, it is.
But it's the same. It's the same with the Latin rite.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I had no idea what an Advent wreath was. And I had no idea that I was doing Christmas all wrong by putting my tree up before the 24th. And I saw people pranking my parish priest. They put a Grinch inflatable in his car because he was always jokingly chiding people in the parish on Facebook who were putting up their Christmas tree weeks before Christmas and going, oh, look how pretty it is. We did it. We got this lovely new tree. He's like, it's still Advent. Stop it. He's like, let us enjoy the Advent season. It is not time to put the tree up yet. And again, it's just a tradition. Now, I also didn't know that Christmas didn't end until February, until I was Catholic.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. I was doing the whole, all right, January 1st, tree comes down. And then no, Yeah, no, don't do that. It stays up till February. It's got to stay there. I didn't know.
We also, when I was a kid growing up, initially when I was little, I would help my dad put up the Christmas lights on our house. And of course, this is back in the day when it was the really big bulbs, and then when I got to be 12 or 13, Dad said, okay, you can do this on your own. And I would just put them up. But the rule in our house was you couldn't put the lights on the house until December 6th, because as any good Byzantine would know, December 6th is St. Nicholas Day. So to us, that was the start of the Christmas season, was St. Nicholas Day. My sock was full of candy and fruit, and I was all set, and I could go out.
And you were still wearing it.
And I was still wearing it. Well, only one. I was hopping around. But there you go. And, going back to the whole communion thing, the great thing about the Byzantine church is that we never went away from, even with COVID, never went away from wine, because, the bread and wine are together. And the only thing we did was, because the priest has a gold spoon and he would place it on your tongue, the bread and wine together. But what they did because of COVID was they take out a separate disposable wooden spoon for each and every person who goes to receive. Now, obviously they don't throw those out. They get burned at some point because they held body and
They've
blood
touched the
of
sacrament,
Christ.
right?
Exactly. So you can't just, you know. So, but there you go. So yeah, so that's why one of the reasons I love going back to my old church like once a month or so is because I receive with both species, which is great.
Yeah. It was kind of the same for me with Palm Sunday, right?
Oh,
And Ash Wednesday. So we would come in like a week prior was kind of I guess you could call it a deadline to bring in some palms to be blessed.
yeah.
Now, also, we would place we, as in my parish, would place an order for palms,
Mm-hmm.
and they would be, the little shoots or whatever in a basket out in the narthex, and we would take them in, and then we would have a procession where the palms would be blessed. And then they end up like that up there in my picture, that cross.
Yeah.
You're origamiing a cross out of the palms, and then you keep it until the following year. And then we take these and we give them to the parish. They're going to be burned, and then those ashes will be used for the following Ash Wednesday.
Yeah.
So one of the first things that I ended up doing, helping out the parish around Palm Sunday, was when people turned in their old palms.
Mm-hmm.
It was me and a handful of other guys. We had to buy a brand new fire pit, because it couldn't have ashes for anything else. We bought a brand new fire pit, and we burned the palms. And then I sat there with this little plastic thing and scooped in and collected all of the ashes, about 2 pounds of ashes. We had so many palms.
Wow.
Into this giant container that contained incense prior to. But obviously we cleaned and washed it out and made sure it was not going to be, I guess it's not the right word, maybe it is, cross-contaminated with other substances in the ashes.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And so I was like, oh, didn't know that's what they did. Now, I seen the Ash Wednesday stuff before in Protestant churches. Obviously never got ashes on my forehead prior to that. But while it's weird, and I say weird as an outsider has no idea what's going on.
Strange, yeah.
Right. It's different from what anybody else who's not Catholic would have ever experienced in their life. I knew about it just because, it's kind of hard not to, at least once a year, when you see people walking around with black crosses smeared on their forehead.
Yeah.
Right.
But
that's one of the things that I did is I burned all the ashes from collecting all the other palms. And then, okay, now these are going in a specific cabinet in the sacristy where the priest is going to be able to get to them when it's time to mix them with the chrism oil on the next Ash Wednesday. And then got my palm. Cool. Now I know what's going on. It's nice to know that when this coming Ash Wednesday, when I get, the cross on my forehead, I burned these.
that actually is pretty cool to be involved like that. And then sticking with that same idea there, something else you may or may not have known. If you think about it now, you open up a number of catalogs. I get the autumn catalog all the time. It's all Catholic stuff you can purchase, and most of it's geared towards parishes and things like that, buying on a large scale. I can order tons of palms. I can get them delivered to my front porch, and they're dirt cheap. Well, if you think about it, late 1800s, early 1900s, palms were not plentiful in places like Eastern Europe. So you used what you had. So in the Byzantine churches there, what they would hand out and distribute was something that was very plentiful, which was pussy willows, because they're blooming in that time. And so here in the United States, and my parish, all the time growing up and up till this very day, on Palm Sunday, we get palms and pussy willows. We get both, which is so cool because we've maintained that tradition of handing out
Small
pussy
T
willows.
tradition. I got you.
Small T tradition. So we, along with the palms, we're burning the pussy willows as well. And so, and that was my job too, as when I was young and altar serve and stuff, I'd be burning palms and pussy willows. But see, it's one of those things, like you see a guy walking out of church on Palm Sunday carrying pussy willows, and you're like, what did I miss? What's going on here? You know? But
unless you're Byzantine, right, then you just know immediately what's going on.
Exactly. And so to me, it wasn't strange. To me, it was weird. Why aren't my neighbors coming home with pussy willows on Palm Sunday? You know? And I would talk to because I had a lot of Latin Rite neighbors, and they would have palms. They didn't have pussy willows, and I thought, well, this is very bizarre. You're getting ripped off. I'm telling you, man, it's great. And you got, when you got a chance, man, you go to a Byzantine liturgy, man. It's gonna knock your socks off.
You know, I'm pretty sure there's a Byzantine Catholic church somewhere near me.
I'll find it.
Like it might not be down the road.
Yeah,
but again, I was very surprised that there is a Maronite, a Syriac tradition right down the street from me.
Yeah.
So who knows? I might end up being able to do that.
Good. And hopefully they'll have a good choir, because it's such an integral part of it is that because the entire liturgy is sung, you don't ever just say, "and with your spirit" or something. I could sing it, but I don't think any of our listeners want to hear me singing "and with your spirit," because that's another thing because we've always said "and with your spirit," whereas the Latin Rite, they used to say and also to you.
And also with you. We don't say "and also with you."
Yeah, no, you say "and with your spirit," but in a Byzantine,
at this parish, we've always done it too.
Oh,
for
even back in the
50
day.
years.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, for the last 50 years, simply because we're in hostile territory.
True.
Right? No, that's something we talked about this past Sunday. We're in hostile territory. You know, we're in the South. We're deep in the Bible Belt. And so when people come from out of town visiting family here and they attend our church, there's been more than a few times, they've come up to our parish priest, one of them, and they say, "Wow, you guys really take it seriously here." Well, yeah, we have to, because that's the only way we could survive, because we do have all these forces always pushing against the Catholic Church, whether they are the hyper aggressive Protestant evangelicals that, you know, want nothing more than to start a crusade of their own and end all Catholics, right? Even if I'm only mean that metaphorically. That's one of the things that makes the parish that I'm a part of great, is if you walk into our parish and you see our parish life and you see everything that we do through all of our ministries, through all of our schools and activities and events and services, it's like walking into the old Baltimore Cathedral in 1949. Everything is as it should be.
Yeah.
And people do get amazed when they come to our parish and they're like, "This is very old school." Now, obviously, we still have 2 Novus Ordo masses, and we still have the Latin Mass, obviously. But they go, "This is done very by the book." And there's not very many liberties, if any at all, that are taken, even though you, as a parish priest, you would obviously have the liberty to take some liberties at the way your parish is run. And we do it all without a parish council. We don't have a parish council. Like, Father Smith could probably run a master class for every single priest on earth on how to run a parish our size or larger without a parish council, which is probably good, because no one likes Susan from the parish council, no matter which parish council it is. No one likes her. You know, they even do their best to slip out the window when she comes knocking on the door.
Of course.
Father, I got something to tell you. No, bye. So, but no, people even find what we consider as Catholics normal to be weird when they're coming from other areas of the country to come and visit.
Sure.
Because we're very strict. We're very by the book. This is Catholic life, not Catholic thing.
Hmm.
But it's so cool to hear you talk about all these different things that the Byzantine Church does. I'm pretty sure if we got Enoch back on here again, he would tell us things that even you've never heard of in the Syriac tradition.
I'm sure, yeah.
And that's Christianity as a whole.
Hmm.
You know, there were things that were accepted that were common practice in Jerusalem that may not have been common practice in Mykonos in Greece, but they're still part of the tradition, just like now we have all of the different rites of the Catholic Church. And I do think that that's one of the things that is really cool, but we also have to understand that when we're talking to people, we're probably coming across as weird.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm cool with
it. Yeah, I'm cool with it too. Speaking of weird, what weird thing did you bring today? I hope it's something weird.
It's, you know what? And it is, because, and it's so, how many times I say this, and I know what we're going to talk about when the recording starts. That's it. You and I don't get together beforehand. We don't discuss it. We don't have a weekly go around where we discuss possible topics. As when you start the recording, I see it on the bottom what we're going to be talking about. And yet somehow I bring something that ties in. And today is no different. So I have this pennant, which is so cool. It's such a beautiful pennant on its own. But it says Catholic Shrine, Indian River, Michigan. And you see it has that crucifix on there. It's a beautiful little pennant. And I don't know if you know anything about this, but that crucifix that's on there.
Baseball team?
They are a baseball team. No.
Seriously? Okay, cool.
No, they're not.
No, see, I had no idea. You could have fooled me.
This crucifix is actually the largest crucifix in the world. And it's in Indian River, Michigan.
Is that what they call cross in the woods?
The cross in the woods. Exactly. So you do know that.
All right.
And
well, I only know about it is because like you posted about it 2 days ago and I happened to be scrolling by and saw it.
Yeah, it came up in conversation on X or something. And so it's so cool. But it's interesting how it all came about. Back in the 40s, there weren't a lot of Catholics in the, I guess they call it the Upper Peninsula or something, the northern part of Michigan. I mean, this is way up there. This is really way up there, Indian River. And in fact, in this area of Indian River, there were only 12 Catholic families at that point. But the bishop decided they need to have a church. And so they appointed this Father Brophy. And I'm really going to give you the very abridged version of the history of this place. But they appointed this Charles Brophy as the pastor there. It was originally going to be called St. Augustine's. And as the father was driving towards the place, he noticed he was going through such beautiful wooded area, lakes, streams, wildlife, and it made him think of now Saint Gattari, which is how the Mohawks pronounce it. The Mohawk girl who converted to Christianity, and she was only blessed at the time, so you couldn't name a church after her. But anyway. But that's what he wanted to do. And as time, they actually did start a parish there. And in time, they wanted to build, because they were using the town hall or something for their masses. They wanted to build a church. And they wanted to take advantage of the beauty of the area. They wanted to build an outdoor church. They do actually have an outdoor church that they use during the summer months. It's mostly tourists that go there. but their actual physical church was built in the style of an Indian longhouse. It's beautiful if you ever get a chance to see it. But the priest, this Father Brophy, was really into attracting people to the area and to Catholicism. He had this idea of building a large cross out by the highway, which would draw attention. And they drew up plans for it and stuff, and they were taking donations. And then he thought, you know what? A cross on its own is not going to do it. It has to be a crucifix. So they have this guy, this sculptor, create the corpus for it. It was so huge, it had to be made in Oslo, Norway, and shipped over here. And so, it goes on and on. The guys who the timbers came from Oregon, and the guys who were working on harvesting the timbers for it and creating the cross took their time and did a beautiful job because they knew it was what it was going to be used for. There's just so many great stories that go along with this shrine. But anyway, it's there now. It's a very popular shrine. It's again, as you mentioned, the cross in the woods is what some people call it. Some people call it the man on the cross. The place contains 7 different shrines. There are shrines to the Holy Family, St. Francis, Our Lady of the Highway, St. Peregrine, who I think most of us know, she's patron saint of cancer patients, St. Gatere, who I mentioned earlier, the Mohawk girl who had converted to Catholicism, Blessed Father Michael McGivney, Divine Mercy, and also the Venerable Frederick Baraga. And so it's an incredibly beautiful place. If you get an opportunity, if you're in way upstate Michigan, you've got to go to the Catholic Shrine in Indian River, Michigan, and see the world's largest crucifix. And maybe you can pick up the newer version of this. This one, I said, is from the 60s. So they don't look like this anymore. They're not as pretty, but they're still nice. But there you go. Talk about tradition. World's largest crucifix. Of course, it's going to be a Catholic church that has it.
So it's actually the world's largest crucifix.
It is the world's largest crucifix. I believe, I'd have to look it up. I believe the corpus is 28 feet tall.
Holy crap. Okay. Now I definitely need to go see this.
You got to go see. They brought in a 70-foot crane to affix it. And in fact, just a few years ago, it had fallen into disrepair. They had a company come out and they volunteered time and money and manpower to repolish it. It's made of copper, I believe. And then they sealed it so that wouldn't happen again. And every 2 years they come back and they buff it and they polish it so that it remains looking as beautiful as it does. And from what I understand,
that's pretty incredible.
Isn't that cool? And from what I understand, when you're driving past a highway and you see this massive crucifix rising above the woods, it just takes your breath away. So yeah, get out there and see the world's largest crucifix.
Who would have thought that it's in Michigan?
Right.
You know what? That's pretty weird. I mean, it's Michigan.
It's Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's really cool, man. I'm gonna have to look that up now. I want to get the exact dimensions, and I'm gonna have to have. I got to beat that record now. I got to take away all the credit from Indian River. You know.
Oh, brother.
Put some respect on Greenville, South Carolina's name.
There you go, dude. Break the record. I would love to see it.
Gonna affix it to the top of my parish.
Yeah. I'll be there for the inauguration or whatever.
Nice.
Yeah.
But all right, there it is. Religion's weird, and that's cool.
And
but we're out of time. So everybody who watched, listened, subscribed, or even if you were forced to watch and listen by someone who before, whatever. If they forced you because you don't like Catholic people, if they held you down and forced you to watch this show, I hope you got something out of it. Hope it was funny. Hope it was entertaining. At the very least, I hope it was slightly educational. But thanks for watching, listening, subscribing, sharing, and forcing this in front of all the anti-Catholics out there so they have nothing more to scream about but my beautiful, handsome face.
God bless everybody.